My Life and Struggle, Autobiography of Badshah Khan, the Khudai Khadmatgars. A few days later, when I was back at Usmanzai, I received a telegram from Nadir Khan informing me that he had conquered Kabul. This made me very happy. To celebrate the victory, we took out two processions, one from the northern end of Hashtnagar and one from the southern end. The two processions met at Usmanzai, where we had held a big meeting. Many patriotic poems were recited and speeches were made. I, too, made a speech. I told the Pathans, there are two ways to national progress. One is the path of religion and the other is the road of patriotism. Even if you have not yet acquired much education, I said, you have all heard of America and Europe. The people in those continents and countries may not be very religious, but they do have a sense of patriotism, love for their nation and social consciousness. And look at the progress that has been made there. Then take a look at ourselves. We have hardly learned to stand on our own 2 feet yet. Look at their standard of living and then take a look at ours. If we are on the road to ruin, it is because we have neither the true spirit of religion nor the true spirit of patriotism, of love of our nation, nor have we developed any social consciousness. A great revolution is coming and you haven't even heard about it. I have just returned from India and one thing I saw there has impressed me very much. I saw that both men and women there are ready to serve their country and their people. And here, leave alone your women. Even your men do not show any desire to serve. They hardly seem to understand the meaning of the word nation or national. A revolution is like a flood. It can bring blessings, but it can also bring devastation. It can bring fertility and prosperity, but it can also bring ruin. Only a nation that is wide awake, whose people are aware of themselves as a nation, where all live together as brothers, in harmony and love, only that nation, I tell you, will benefit by the revolution. A revolution is like a flood. If the people are vigilant, they will be ready for the flood, and when it comes, the whole nation will move along it. And like the flood, when it subsides, it leaves fertile fields behind. So the revolution, when it is over, leaves the ground clear for the reconstruction of the nation. But if the people are asleep, indifferent to each other and indifferent to the country, the whole nation will be swept away by the flood, by the revolution when it comes. Oh, Pathans, take a look at the developed countries of the world. Do you think their prosperity has just dropped from the sky? It has not, no more than our prosperity will drop from the heaven. Then how is it that you may ask that they are prosperous and we are not? I will tell you, and please think over this. The secret of their prosperity is that in those countries there are men and women who sacrifice their luxuries, their pleasures and their comfort for the sake of prosperity of the nation. If we can produce such men and women, we shall be prosperous too. Please remember this. If the nation prospers, it will affect everyone. Every man, woman, and child will benefit thereby. Don't think that by acquiring riches for yourselves, your country will become prosperous. It will not. In other countries, people have learned that no man is an island. But in our country, everyone lives in a dream of a world of their own. Like the animals, any animal can find a place to live, find a mate, rear its young. Can we call ourselves the crown of the creation if we do just that and nothing more? Therefore, I want to impress this upon your minds. If you want your country and your people to prosper, you must stop living for yourselves alone. You must start living for the community. That is the only way to prosperity and progress. I have been told that Amanullah Khan used to call himself the revolutionary king of the Pakhtuns, and indeed it was he who inspired us with the idea of revolution. But the Afghans did not take much advantage of it as we did, because they were asleep and we were beginning to wake up. The meeting had a marked effect on the people. The next day, a young man came to see me and told me that he wanted to found an organization devoted to the service of the Pakhtun people and to social reform. As a matter of fact, we already had the Islamul Afghani, the organization we had started for spreading education in our province. In our opinion, this was very important work, and we thought that this organization should continue to concentrate on education. But we realized that there were many weaknesses in our social system, and we felt that we ought to start a movement that would help to make people more socially conscious. And this is how the Khudai Khadmatgar movement was founded. We did not want this movement to have anything to do with politics, but later, on the cruel oppression of the British subjected upon us, made it impossible for the movement to keep away from the politics. And strange though it may seem, it is a fact that the British brought the Congress and us together. Factions and feuds and social evils were rife amongst the Pathans. Families were always quarreling amongst themselves and taking each other to court, and a lot of money that could have been spent on good food and decent clothes was wasted on all these bad habits. And not only money, we also wasted precious time that could have been spent in developing our trade and agriculture. All these things were discussed at great length, and eventually in 1929, we were able to found the kind of organization we wanted. We decided to call it the Khudai Khidmatgar movement, Servants of God movement. Our motive for choosing that name was that we wanted to awaken in the Pathans the idea of service and the desire to serve their country and their people in the name of God, an idea and a desire which was sadly lacking among them. Another thing that the Pathans were inclined to be violent, and their violence was directed against their own countrymen, their own kith and kin, against their closest relations. They were like smoldering embers, always ready to flare up and inflict harm and injury on their own brethren. One of their worst characteristics was that their habit of taking revenge. They badly needed to change their antisocial customs, to check their violent outbursts, and to practice good behavior. And this was what we thought the Khudai Khidmatgar movement could and would do. Anyone aspiring to become a Khudai Khidmatgar had to take this solemn vow. I am a Khudai Khidmatgar, and as God needs no service but serving His creation is serving Him. I promise to serve humanity in the name of God. I promise to refrain from violence and from taking revenge. I promise to forgive those who oppress me and who treat me cruelly. I promise to refrain from taking part in feuds and in quarrels and from creating enmity. I promise to treat every Pathan as my brother and friend. I promise to refrain from antisocial customs and practices. I promise to live a simple life, to practice virtue and to refrain from evil. I promise to practice good manners and good behavior and not to lead a life of idleness. I promise to devote at least 2 hours a day to social work. Meetings and conferences. A Khilafat conference was held at Calcutta in December 1928, in which we also participated. There were many Peshawaris in Calcutta, mostly fruit vendors. When the Khilafat conference had started, I began to notice that there was great antagonism between the Punjabis and Muhammad Ali and Shaukat Ali. The Punjabis are strange people. To give you an example, one day in the Zamindar office, I said to Akhtar Ali Khan, listen, you and I are good friends, aren't we? So if all other papers in Punjab write against me, I have at least one friend who doesn't want to give the Punjabis the wrong impression about me. He laughed and said, we newspapermen have no feelings of charity for either the Punjabis or the Indian leaders. We insult them both if it makes a good story. The Punjabis played the same game at the subjects committee meeting at Calcutta one evening. I was sitting on the platform with other leaders. One of the Punjabi leaders was speaking. In the course of his speech, he criticized Muhammad Ali, who was sitting beside me. Muhammad Ali could not bear this and he became very angry. He got up, flung some abusive remarks at the speaker, whereupon another Punjabi leader who was sitting near us on the platform jumped on his feet and waving about a knife which he had suddenly produced from somewhere, began to rail at Muhammad Ali. Pandemonium broke out on the platform. Fortunately, a large number of Pathans were attending the meeting. We all got up and managed to stop the fighting and rescue Muhammad Ali. If we had not been there to intervene, he might have been seriously wounded. It appeared that Muhammad Ali was displeased with the Hindus, and in his presidential address at the Khilafat conference, he had said some very unpleasant things about the Hindus and rudely criticized their society, their traditions, and their customs. This kind of criticism was very unbecoming of a leader, and it spoiled the conference for me. Therefore, I decided to attend the Congress session, which was being held at Calcutta at the same time as the Khilafat conference. It was the first time that I attended a Congress meeting. As it happened here too, the subjects committee meeting was in progress. Gandhiji was addressing the meeting. A conceited young man in the audience kept on heckling him, but Gandhiji did not get angry. He just laughed and went on talking. The young man interrupted again and again, but Gandhiji only laughed. This made a deep impression on me, and when I returned to my lodging, I told my companions about it. If only our Muslim leaders could remain as calm and unperturbed as Gandhiji, the leader of the Hindus, I said. We thought we ought to speak to Muhammad Ali about this, so the next day, a few of us went to see him. Muhammad Ali Sahib, I said, we all respect you as a leader of the Muslims. I want to tell you about an experience I had yesterday. I attended the meeting of the Congress Subjects Committee and I heard Gandhiji deliver a speech. A young man in the audience kept on heckling in the most unpleasant way, but Gandhiji just laughed off and went on speaking. He did not get excited. He never even changed the tempo of his speech. Muhammad Ali Sahib, you are our leader. We all look up to you. You are our superior to all of us. But you would be even more superior if you could develop some of that patience and self-control that Gandhiji displayed. Muhammad Ali Sahib did not react as we had hoped he would. He became very annoyed and said, "And who do you think you are, you Pathans from back and beyond, to come and tell me how to behave?" Then he got up and left the room. We were very disappointed and hurt. After that, I did not want to attend the Khilafat conference anymore, so I went back home. In December 1929, the Congress session was to be held at Lahore. Many people from our province were going to attend the session, and I also went. At the meeting, it was impressed upon us that the Pathan women too could play a part in the service of the country and the nation, and that they were ready and eager to do so. All of us, the frontier people who were attending the session, held a meeting amongst ourselves to discuss the idea. At this Congress session, it was also decided that we must work towards the complete independence of India. When we returned to our villages, we started the work with great enthusiasm. We went from village to village, talked to the people, founded jirgas, that is Assembly of Elders, enlisted Khudai Khadmatgars. The movement spread to all parts of the province, even among the tribes, and soon it became so popular that jirgas and Khudai Khadmatgars were established in every village we visited. Perhaps the best effect our movement had was that it removed from the people's heart the fear of the British government and inspired them with new hope and courage. Not only did the police and the CID kept an eye on us when we were touring the villages, but sometimes the British themselves attended our meetings, and they were astonished at the great revolution our movement had started. They sometimes asked me what kind of magic spell I had exercised on the Pathans, and they were well aware of the danger to themselves. For a few months, the government patiently watched what we were doing but took no action. During these months, we worked day and night to extend the movement to the farthest corner of the province. About 3 months after the movement had been founded, an order came from the Chief Commissioner. The organization you are running all over the country must be disbanded immediately. In my reply, I said, our organization is purely social, it is not a political movement. Actually, I continued, what we are doing ought to be done by the government of the country. If you cannot take over the social work our movement is doing, you ought to at least give us all the help you can rather than stop us. The Chief Commissioner said, your work may be purely social at the moment, but what guarantee have I that once you have trained the Pathans, you will not use them against us. I told them that guarantees between people must be based on trust. If you are prepared to trust us, I said, we shall also trust you and we shall do nothing against you. I can see a revolution coming in this country. A revolution is like a flood. We are training the Pathans to be prepared for it so that they will not be swept away with the flood when it comes. When the British would not trust us in April 1930, there was a mass meeting of Khudai Khadmatgars at Usmanzai. After the meeting, I was going to Peshawar, but on the way there, at Naki Thana, I was arrested and taken back to Charsadda. Mia Ahmad Shah, who was our president, Abdul Akbar Khan, our secretary, Salar Sarfaraz Khan, and Haji Shah Nawaz Khan, the organizers of the meetings, were also arrested. My arrest had one remarkable consequence, which I would like to mention here. When I was arrested at Naki Thana, there were no Khudai Khidmatgar volunteers with me. The people of Naki Thana were very angry and they said it is a disgrace that the British have arrested Badshah Khan in our district. They expressed their anger and indignation in a way which made me very happy. They all became Khudaidad Khidmatkar, and that gave wide publicity to the movement. It also put me up by a few degrees in the esteem of the British. This was April 23rd. The story of Kissa Khana Bazaar deserves to be recorded in the annals of the freedom movement in golden letters. When the British troops and their armored cars arrived in the town to suppress the uprising, Hindus, Sikhs, and Muslims stood shoulder to shoulder, forming a human wall. The troops drove their armored cars straight into the wall of men, breaking it up and crushing several people to death. Suddenly, a young man set one of the cars on fire. The fire spread, and 4 cars were reduced to ashes. Then the soldiers opened fire and sent bullets in all directions. The people faced all this bravely, and many sacrificed their lives. This was also the memorable day when the Gharwali troops gave their testimony of their love for their country and their people by refusing to fire at the crowd. The heroic sacrifice of so many patriots and the courage shown by the Gharwali troops will never be blotted out from the nation's memory. After this unforgettable day, 23rd April, firing was again resorted to on 31st May. It started with the killing of Sardar Ganga Singh's 2 innocent children. The children's mother was injured and Sardar Ganga Singh was dismissed from the government service. The news of my arrest spread like wildfire. Some of my colleagues in Peshawar were arrested on the same day, and when it became known, riots started in Kissa Khan Bazaar. The police opened fire and a number of people fell as martyrs for our cause. At Charsadda, thousands of people collected to demonstrate their anger. They surrounded the locked up, but because we had taught them to be non-violent, because my brother, Dr. Khan Sahab, also arrived and spoke to the people, no violence occurred at Charsadda. In the evening, a motor car came to take us away. The cavalry had come out from Mardan, and with escorts in front and behind, we set out. We reached Mardan in the same evening and were promptly locked up. The next morning, we were taken to Risalpur, where we were produced before Khan Bahadur Qazi Khan, the district magistrate. He sentenced all of us to 3 years rigorous imprisonment under Section 40 of the Frontiers Crime Regulation. From Risalpur, we were taken to Gujarat prison in Punjab, where we found our colleagues from Peshawar, Ali Gul Khan, Sayyid Lal Badshah, who had been taken there earlier. Political leaders from Punjab, from Delhi, and the frontier were there too. All of them, whether Sikh, Hindu, or Muslim, were serious thinkers. Never in any other prison has it been any good fortune to spend such happy days in the congenial company of learned religious and political leaders. It was the greatest benefit to me. The discussions we had here left a deep impression on me that can never be blotted out. Dr. Ansari formed our own parliament for us in the prison. He felt that it would not be long before we would have our own government and we should prepare ourselves to run the country. He taught us how a parliament works. Dr. Gopi Chand ordered many books on a variety of subjects for us, which Shyam Lalji, leaders from the Rohtak, used to read out to us. Hansraj was there too, and whenever his wife visited him, she used to bring all kinds of nice food for us. Pandit Jagat Ram of Haryana and I conducted classes on the Bhagavad Gita and the Quran. And through our efforts, the Hindus amongst us learned about the Quran and the Muslims became familiar with the Gita. There was constant rivalry between Zafar Ali Khan and Dr. Kichliu, are the premiership, and they vied to win over the frontier people. For the leader we voted for always won the premiership. There was also one Seth Sahab who used to make pakoras and shared them amongst us, nice and hot. Devdas Gandhi too was imprisoned with us for a few months. Mufti Kifayatullah Sahib used to prepare very tasty dal, but used to put it too much of chilies. One day, a Sikh fellow prisoner said to the superintendent, "There is no jhatka, slaughtering of the animals according to the Sikh custom, done in Gujarat town. We Sikhs are meat eaters and we would be very grateful for your permission to get some chickens and kill them here." The superintendent replied, "The frontier Muslims would not like that." Then one of the six leaders came to me and said, "The superintendent says that your people object to jhatka and that you would be against our killings of chicken here even if we were given official permission." I replied, "Sardarji, you people will do the slaughtering, won't you? And you people will eat the chicken." "Yes," the Sikh replied. "Well then," I said, "how can we object? You can go ahead. As far as we are concerned, you have our permission." Then I called my companions together and we discussed the question. Only Sayyid Lal Badshah voted against the jhatka inside the prison. "Sayyid Sahab," I said, "how would you feel if anyone in this prison said he was against halal, the Muslim way of slaughtering the animals?" "But that is a part of our religion," he said. "Why should anyone object to our religious customs?" "Well," I said, "Jhatka is the part of their religion and therefore it is not proper for us to be against it." Then Sayyid Sahab understood and he withdrew his opposing vote. Persecution of the red shirts. While we were in prison, the people at home suffered under a new wave of tyranny and oppression, which the government had launched. They had practically blockaded the whole province, and nobody was allowed to leave it, lest he carried any complaint abroad. And the world became aware of the cruelties the British were inflicting upon the Pathans. No outsiders were allowed to enter the province either, lest they see the condition of the people were living in. Two of my colleagues, Mia Jafar Shah and Mia Abdullah Shah, managed to get out, and after a hazardous journey and crossing the river Indus, they came to visit me in prison. I was given special permission to see them, for normally I was not allowed to see visitors. They reported to me the conditions in the frontier province. They said they had been sent to ask me to give up the movement. They said the British wanted to crush the Pathans and destroy their very existence. They told me that after I and my colleagues had been arrested and locked up in Gujarat prison, the army had arrived and surrounded Usmanzai. Then the soldiers went to the Khudai Khadmatgars office building and they climbed up the walls to the first floor where the office was. They got hold of all the Khudai Khadmatgars in the office and threw them down the road. My son Wali, who was 14 years old then, had gone to the Khudai Khadmatgars office after school hours and was sitting with the men. One of the soldiers pointed a bayonet at him, but a Muslim soldier stretched out his hand in front of the bayonet and saved Wali. Then Hassan Khan took Wali by his hand and led him down the stairs. The soldiers set on fire the Khudai Khidmatkar office and reduced it to ashes. Then they went into the village and arrested everyone who was wearing the red Khudai Khidmatgars shirt and beat their prisoners mercilessly. The deputy commissioner was going around shouting angrily and arrogantly, "Are there any more red shirts?" People were so frightened that nobody dared to utter a word. A Khan from Usmanzai, Muhammad Abbas Khan, was standing there and he heard the deputy commissioner roar at the crowd. He ran home and put some red color in the tub of water and quickly dipped his shirt and the shirts of his servants in it. The clothes were still dripping wet when he and his servants put them on and ran back to where the soldiers were. Standing in front of them, he said to the deputy commissioner, "Yes, there are some more red shirts. Here we are." Muhammad Abbas Khan had not been officially enlisted as a Khudaidat Khidmatkar. In fact, he was a little impatient with us, but his patriotism had inspired him to this brave act. Of course, the army arrested him too, but his courage and his sacrifice were a source of inspiration to the Pathans. Whenever oppression and tyranny the British chose to inflict on them, they would not give up their red shirts. On the contrary, the movement grew day by day. On the day of the meeting, there were about 500 Khudai Dad Khidmatgars in Usmanzai. When I was released from prison and returned home, there were 50,000. As a matter of fact, it was British themselves who made propaganda for our movement. They took the troops to the village. Then they told the men to come out and they made them sit in the burning sun. After a while, they asked them to put their thumbprints to a declaration stating that they were not Khudaidat Khidmatkars. "But we really are not Khudaidat Khidmatkars," said the villagers, and they were telling the truth. The British said, "Never mind, we want your thumbprints all the same." The men still refused, and not only that, but they were so disgusted with the British that they gave cold shoulder to anyone who dared to put his thumbprint to the declaration. Only one man weakened and gave in to the demand. When he got home, his wife was washing clothes. "How is it that you have come home?" she asked. "Nobody else has." "They let me go," he said. "Why did they let you go and not the others?" asked the wife, and getting suspicious, she added, "Show me your thumb." When she saw the traces of the printing ink on his thumb, she knew what had happened. She lifted the club and she was using to beat the clothes and drove her husband out of the house. "Disgraceful," she cried. "If you are not ashamed of yourself, I am. I will not stay with a man who lets the British have his thumbprint. I am going." The man ran back to where the other villagers were sitting and sat down with them again. The British asked him why he had come back. "My wife will not let me stay in the house," he said. There was another incident like this. Haji Shahnawaz Khan from our village, who was in prison with us, furnished security and thus got himself released. When he returned home, everybody sneered at him and gave him cold shoulder. He became so ashamed of himself that he took his own life. When the friends who had come to visit me in prison had told me all of these things, we decided that they must not have returned to the village. Instead, they were to go to Lahore, Delhi, and Simla, where they would contact our friends in the Muslim League and inform them of the situation in the frontier province and ask for their help. And if they could not help, they could at least acquaint the world with the terrible conditions in the frontier province. A few months later, these friends came to see me again. They told me that they had traveled great deal and that they had talked to prominent Muslim League leaders but without any success. The Muslim leaders, they said, were not prepared to help us because we were opposing the British and they could not, take our therefore take our side. The British, they said, were protecting them in order that they could fight the Hindus. Until then, we had not joined the Congress, nor did we have any connection with them. Now we were desperate. A drowning man has no choice but to catch any straw to save himself. We were very disappointed with the Muslim League. So we asked our two friends to contact the Congress leaders and request them to help us. In their meeting, the Congress leaders, our friends, were told that the Congress would be prepared to give us all possible help if we, from our side, would agree to join them in the struggle for the freedom of India. When our friends brought this message to us, we asked them to return to the frontier province and put this proposal before the provincial jirga of the Khudai Khidmatgar movement. They did. The jirga accepted the proposal and announced that they were joining the Congress. When the news of the Pathans joining hands with the Congress reached the British, they realized how foolish they had been. They sent me a message asking me to cooperate with them in bringing about reforms. The frontier province, the message said, will immediately enjoy all the reforms that have been brought about in India, and in future we will do even more for you than we are doing for India, but on the condition that you resign from Congress. I called a meeting of all the political prisoners, Muslims as well as Hindus and Sikhs. I told them the whole story and asked them what they would advise us to do. A number of them advised me to take advantage of this opportunity, but be diplomatic, they said, and accept the British terms. But I told them that I could not be such a hypocrite. Besides, I said, we cannot depend on the British, and we cannot now break our promise to the Congress. Therefore, my reply to the government was, you have no confidence in us, therefore, we cannot have any confidence in you. The siege of Bannu. Now that we had joined hands with Congress, the Speaker of the Central Assembly, Vithalbhai Patel, sent a delegation to the frontier province to inquire into the recent incidents. At Atak Bridge, the delegates were stopped by the government police and were told that they could not enter the province. They then went to Rawalpindi and started their investigations there. They wrote a long report on the atrocities that had been committed in the frontier province. The pro-Congress papers all over India published this report and began making propaganda for us. The British government seized the report, but the Congress had already sent large number of copies to America and England, where they were being distributed among the people. In May, after the firing in Peshawar had taken place, the Khudai Khidmatgars were again fired on in the village of Thakar in Mardan district, and many people were killed. The Hujra of Khudai Khidmatgar leader was set on fire, as well as the village club building of Khan Ghulam Muhammad Khan of Lunkhawar. Many other houses were reduced to ashes, and many people were arrested. After that, the army went to Hathikhel in Bannu district and rained bullets on a peaceful meeting of waziris, and several people lost their lives. Others were arrested and sentenced to 14 years imprisonment. Then Bannu towns were sieged and all exits and entrances were closed so that nobody could leave the town, not even on urgent business. Bannu dependent on the villages for its supply of food, and it was exactly for that reason that the town was blockaded. The deputy commissioner thought that if the people were starved, they would voluntarily turn their backs on Congress and the Khudaidat Khidmatgars, and the village people would get alarmed. In Bannu town as well as in Bannu district, the Khudaidat Khidmatgar were working with great zeal and enthusiasm, and the action of deputy commissioner could not stop that. There was a stream that ran from the nearby villages into the town. Malik Akbar Ali Khan, God bless him, managed to bring food supplies as well as cattle fodder into the town by means of this stream, and he was able to make arrangements for the protection of the supplies too. Consequently, the people of Bannu did not have to face starvation, and humans as well as animal lives were saved. We are greatly indebted to the late Malik Ali Akbar Khan, for it was because of his daring that the deputy commissioner's shameful and inhumane scheme did not succeed, and he was obliged to lift the siege. The Gandhi-Irwin Pact had been concluded, yet at the government's order, the meeting at Usmanzai had been fired on. It happened like this. A meeting of Khudai Khidmatgar was being held. Troops came and surrounded the meeting hall. They ordered the people to adjourn the meeting and disperse. The people refused, whereupon the soldiers opened fire. Some people were killed, but our meetings continued to be held in spite of all the British tyranny and oppression, and the army continued to break them up. The Khudaidat Khidmatgars said that the Sikhs and the Afridis in the army were very sympathetic to our cause, but that our brothers, the Bangash and the Khataks, had no mercy on us whatsoever. On the contrary, they used to assault and beat up our people. When the troops fired at our meetings in Usmanzai, they sent down such a shower of bullets that the audience, unarmed and defenseless, had no choice but to run away for life. A strange thing happened. Many women and girls had come to see what the meeting was like. One of them was the young sister of Rabnawaz Khan. This girl was struck by panic, or so it seemed, for instead of running away from the firing, she straight ran towards it. Those who were running away from the meeting hall shouted at her, "Where are you going, sister? Come this way. For God's sake, look out. Can't you see what is going on? Stop, don't go further." Rabnawaz Khan's sister shouted back, "Let me go, please. I am going that way because you are all running away. Let me go. Let a bullet hit me and I shall die, or the British will say that not one among the Pathans is ready to lay his life for his faith." The girl's courage and pride made such an impression on the people that they all trooped back into the meeting hall. When the British soldiers saw this, they shouted, "What do you people think you are doing?" They replied, "We want to take away the bodies of our dead and save them from your hands." Such a huge crowd collected that the soldiers found themselves surrounded and became very frightened. The people allowed them to leave, but they first wanted to make sure that they were not carrying any of the martyrs' bodies away with them. The British soldiers had to agree, and each and every one of them was searched. Though some of our brothers had been killed, the people of Usmanzai also scored a great victory that day. It was not only the frontier people who were annoyed with the British, but the people in the agencies and the tribal areas too were boiling with rage. Therefore, the Afridis launched an armed attack on the Makhri Godown in Peshawar. The Mohmans, the Safis, the Usman Khels, the Mamuns, and the Salarzai attacked Shapkadar Dheri, Mathura, and other localities. These crusaders made Kandi and Sobankhur their headquarters, and the hostilities against the British went on for months. Attacks were made in those tribal areas where the British were in absolute power and where they kept troops. But in those tribal areas where the British had not fixed permanent frontiers, or where there was an agency between the two frontiers, they approached the British through the Jirgas and sent them an ultimatum. They demanded that Malang Baba, that is Gandhiji, and I be released from prison immediately, and that the red shirts be released, and that the government refrain forthwith from tyrannizing and oppressing the Pathans. Unless their demands were complied with, the tribesmen said they would wage an open and armed war against the British. All over the tribal areas, these uprisings were taking place. The Tarkani tribe organized a large jirga composed of Mamuns, Salarzais, and Usman Khels. This jirga approached the political agent at Malakand. Eyewitnesses have told me what happened at the meeting. When the members of the jirga arrived at the agent's house, they found the table laid with sumptuous food and tea. There were also heaps of coins and bundles of currency notes on the table. This show of honoring his guest on part of the agent was only to disguise his hope that greed and temptation of money might get the better of them. But none of the Jirga members touched the tea or the dainties or even looked at the money. They would rather have spat on it with contempt. The political agent wanted to shake hands with one Badshah Khan, but the Khan withdrew his hand and said, I would not pollute myself by touching a hand that is red with the blood of my brethren. Badshah Khan, the tribal chief of the Salarzais, was a shining light among his people. The political agent who wanted to win over the tribal chiefs said, if you will kindly allow me some time, I shall forward your demands to the government of India. He really did go away later. The kindness and the affection my tribal brothers showed me and their love for the nation are still fresh in my memory and will remain fresh as long as I live. Neither the British government, when it was in power, nor the Pakistani government after the partition have ever allowed me to have any connection with my tribal brethren or to visit them and stay with them and share their sorrows and happiness. The British divided this united family of the Pakhtuns, this united country, into different administrative sections. One of them was the frontier province where I lived and which used to be called the governor's province. The second section was the agencies, that is to say, those parts that were subordinate to the political agent. The third was those territories that were directly administered by a political agent. There were four independent tribal areas. In fact, the Pakhtun country was divided into eight parts, of which not one had any legal or administrative connection with Delhi. The British and later the Pakistanis' motive behind this was the fear that would establish a firmly united brotherhood. They thought that it was safer for them if we remained a collection of small tribes and small territories separated from each other. The worst tyrants in history could not have thought of a more devastating way of keeping our country and our nation under suppression. Even of Genghis Khan, who killed thousands of people, it is said, he came with evil in his mind, but he left welfare in the wake of his armies. But under the British and later under the Pakistani policies, hundreds and thousands of Pakhtuns, who as a united family might have become one of the strongest nations in Asia and done greatest service to mankind, were denied existence and a place in the history of the world. My only struggle today is against that tyranny and that oppression. What crime has this nation committed? Why should it be erased from the pages of history? Why should a nation of noble, gentle, and respectable men and women be deliberately destroyed? For that is what it amounts to. If such unholy and improper methods are used to keep a nation under subjugation. I have one great dream, one great longing. I want to see all the Pathan tribes from Balochistan to Chitral united into one brotherhood. I want to see them share each other's sorrow and happiness. I want to see them work together as equal partners. I want to see them play their national role and take their rightful place among the nations of the world for the service of God and humanity. Outsiders have presented an entirely false picture of us to the world, and it is with deep grief and sadness in my heart that I have to say this. For one thing, we are completely cut off from the world. All our doors have been closed so that nobody can come near us and see what we are like. Our enemies never stop making propaganda against us. They say that we are savages, that we are uncivilized, and goodness knows what else. How can anybody with any human feelings bear all these false and disparaging remarks about our tribal brethren? Their love of freedom and liberty is described as disregard to law and order. Their bravery and courage is called savagery. They do what they like as and when they like, it is said. Their traditional hospitality and sociability are misrepresented, and it is said that they don't hesitate to borrow or even steal from their guests. They take bribes, it is said, and they do not conform to any rules of good behavior. A Pathan, it is said, is like an unbridled camel. This is a completely false image of the gentle, gallant Pathan tribesmen presented to the world by the cunning, hostile outsiders, and the selfish governments use it as an excuse to crush the Pathans, to blow them up with bombs, to mow them down with machine guns, to destroy their hearts and homes. The last few centuries have been years of darkness for us, years of suffering. From the Mughal to the British period and from the British to the Pakistani rule, the tribal Pathans have never been treated with equality and dignity. They live in hard and rocky regions in the lap of the mountains, where the fields are barren and the soil is dry. This is their destiny. The barren soil can neither nourish nor support them. Trade is unprofitable because trade requires good communications and a proper transport system. They have never had the opportunity to learn the art or craft, for that requires long spells of peace and quiet, which they have not known for the last few hundred years. They have had to fight wars. They have been subjected to bombing. They have been murdered. Imperialist powers have used their territory as a training ground for their armies and turned a peaceful country into a battlefield. They have had to do without schools or for education of their children. They have had no hospitals to nurse the sick. Like flowers in the desert, they are born, bloom for a while, with nobody to look after them, wither and return to the dust they came from. They have neither bread nor water. They have neither land nor gardens. There are no marketplaces. There are no shops. They have none of the necessities of life, and often life itself is denied to them. I cannot think what callous, cold hearted world wants from them. Instead of looking up those thousands of beautiful girls and handsome young men with love and admiration, mankind has tyrannized and outraged them. For is it not an outrage to insult and abuse others behind their backs? I have one great desire. I want to rescue these gentle, brave, patriotic people from the tyranny of the foreigners who have disgraced and dishonored them. I want to create for them a world of freedom where they can live in peace, where they can laugh and be happy. I want to kiss the ground where their ruined homes once stood before they are destroyed before they were destroyed by the savage strangers. I want to take a broom and sweep the alleys and the lanes, and I want to clean their houses with my own hands. I want to wash away the stains of blood from their garments. I want to show the world how beautiful they are, these people from the hills. And then I want to proclaim, show me if you can, any gentler, more courteous, more cultured people than these.